Welcome to the ITAD Talk podcast with your host, Jeff Bittner.
So welcome to ITAD Talk, and this afternoon our guest is Sean Magann from SMEs Lifecycle Services. And Sean is an international sales and marketing management executive with over 15 years of experience selling into Fortune 500 companies, including the 3 leading hyperscalers. He is an expert on logistics and a champion of account-based marketing and sustainability. So I'd like to welcome you this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
And once again, to our listeners, SMEs is either the largest or one of the largest metals recycling lifecycle service companies in the world.
Yes, sir.
So a few questions for you. SMEs has established itself as a global provider of e-recycling and IT disposal services. How has SMEs' strategy changed over the past few years?
It's a really good question. So we've tried to, it's tough to compete solely on recycling. That's where our DNA is. That's where we were born from the metals business. And so, we used to work with a lot of clients specifically on the recycling part. But over the last few years, we tried to balance our revenue of commodities with resale and also now redeployment. So the biggest change is where 5-6 years ago, 80% of our revenue was from commodities. It's flipped on its head. I would guess that only 20% of our revenue at SMEs Lifecycle is commodities, where the other 80% are services and resale and redeployment.
So when you say the word commodities, we aren't talking about like just metals. You're talking about like processors, memory, and hard drives and things like that?
Exactly, the commodities that would come from them. So it's steel, it's aluminum, it's gold, it's silver. So the actual, the intrinsic value of the stuff versus the resale value. So
what you're saying is 80% is now coming from the resale value?
Correct.
Okay.
Resale or redeployment.
Okay.
And when I say redeployment, it's where we actually give it, we redeploy it to the client. We take it in, we fix it, put a lick of paint on it, and give it back to the client.
Okay, but aren't you also bringing it in and resell it too, as they like if they'll do a 5,000 laptops and so on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do both. So we do and to your point, it's a fair point. Most of the revenue we have is from the resale. Where redeployment, it's new, but it's growing to where But you're right. The model of resale laptops and this type of thing is certainly the majority of the revenue.
Okay. And I understand that SMEs set up a special facility in Tampa, Florida area, which is not too far from our plant in Naples, and it's focused also on data center equipment. Why was it important to establish a separate operation, and what have you learned as a result?
Yeah, so we really wanted a playground to where we can do some innovation projects. And we've done a lot of work with removing ICs from motherboards, right? And using different types of machines, rework stations, and we wanted it separate because we didn't want the folks there to be sort of burdened by gravity. We wanted them to say, hey, our big facilities are very process driven, and they take a very process driven approach, which is great. But in our Tampa facility, we wanted folks to just see what we could do, right? Not necessarily burdened by the metrics at the other. Again, everything else at the other sites are throughput and units per minute. Quality is huge too. Don't get me wrong, but it's just a different mindset where we wanted them separated to where they have the ability to dream. And we just found that when the production folks were in charge of the facility, it just that mindset seeps in, and so we just wanted it separate.
So as far as the Tampa area, is that are you like running it like full bore, or like are you still ramping up over there?
Well, it's more of a project-based work. So we when ideas come in, like again, we're big on this idea of chip pulling right now. That it'll be full for a while, and then once it's mature, we'll take it to an actual facility. So we'll take whatever we kind of dream up in Tampa, and then we'll move it to one of our larger facilities for production work. And then maybe idles, we work on something else, and then that'll ramp up. So it's almost like a project base where it's ebbing and flowing all the time.
Okay. And what are some of the challenges you see for the industry in the coming months and years?
Well, there's a few headwinds, right? I think the main thing is reporting sustainability metrics. That's a challenge that we have to do better, because this is what our big customers are asking for. There's always been a benefit of recycling versus throwing something away, and we've all measured that, and there's EPA calculators and this type of thing. But our clients are asking us for more data on that. So that's one of the big things we're doing is really working on the metrics and presenting that, because that's the work product. Clients don't necessarily see what we do in the plants, but they actually see the reporting that we generate. So that's huge. So better reporting is one. I think sustainability in general, trying to cut down on the distance traveled of material, to make that a lot more efficient. Customers are asking for that. And I think there's always the challenge of there's not a lot of barriers to entry in our business. And so, firms like yourself and ourselves, companies that are, big firms, established firms, we're always competing with smaller startups. And that always can be a challenge, because some of these startups don't necessarily have the business ethics, like your firm,
right.
Or hopefully our firm.
Right. Yeah, in fact, I think when we were both at the ITAD Summit show, we were hearing about one of the other recyclers that was using offshore partners, and they were tracking some of the material with the GPS trackers, and some of it was going not where the partner said it was going, and they had to actually stop the motion in progress and go over there and get those assets. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's always an issue in our business, right? Because there's always the like I said, there's not a lot of barriers, and there's always the temptation to cheat. And so anyways, that's always that will be a and this is why I think companies like ours, yours and my company, will try to drive the maturation of the business, to have tougher standards, to really to make clients know that there's a small startups, and there's nothing wrong with a startup. I don't mean that, but there's companies that are doing the right thing and getting the right certifications and this type of thing, versus companies that are just kind of flipping material.
So one question, we're working on our R2 V3 certification, which is the most advanced certification in R2. And I was wondering if you guys have started that as well.
We have. Yeah, we definitely have. We've worked with Corey and the Siri group, and they've been really great in hearing some of our concerns and questions. And it's no joke. I mean, it is no joke. I mean,
So, we've actually had Reich on the phone at least once a week, trying to help our operations group make sure we get everything intact for the documentation, and how the reporting is changing and everything. So, is that one of the reasons why you're doing the chip pulling now? Because like in the past, maybe you could sell chip on board, but now since you can't, maybe some overseas vendors don't want to give you traceability on the circuit boards and what have you that's left over from that. If you pull them here, then you've got the traceability, plus you've got the profit here.
No, not really. It was more driven by sustainability and some of the customers wanting to find more value. I mean, it's a fair point. It maybe it's an unintended consequence, but I actually didn't think about the R2 part when we decided to do it. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's something that we just kind of became aware of in the past probably 4 or 5 weeks as well, from that one aspect. What would be your advice for other small and medium ITAD firms attempting to grow?
I think, I think partnerships are okay, right? I think, finding other companies. No one company can be everywhere. And I think it's important to find a network, or involve yourself in a network of companies that can work globally, because it still seems to me, there's still a lot of local business, but the big clients that we work with, and the ones, and I see a growing movement, they want the one neck to choke, right, on a global scale. And so I think for smaller firms, I think it's important to work with other firms like your firm or my firm to really help put the the global solution together, because I've seen it's funny in the past 7 years working in the business, that the drive to single sources, or maybe not even single, maybe dual source, but to have fewer vendors is really moving, right? Because for all the reasons, and anytime you have multiple vendors, your chain of custody can be complicated, and that's where the leaks happen. So I would ask smaller firms, I would advise them to really try to get that global footprint as much as they can. And if they can't, then work with other companies that can help them get there.
So are you finding, let me just ask this next question because it kind of leads into that, but we've seen that the pandemic has impacted the supply chains, the labor market, and the resale markets. So with SIM's global footprint, how has COVID affected your business, and how do you think that will change in the coming months?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So overall, it's been good because, again, since we've started to work with data centers, the growth in data centers has only been accelerated by COVID. More people working from home, more people watching Netflix. I mean, the utilization of the cloud, it's been crazy. I mean, they're growing. Every time we talk to one of our cloud customers, they're always a bit embarrassed because you never want to, be fortunate from a bad situation. But COVID's really, really helped accelerate the growth in the cloud. We were just talking with a guy from a bank in London, and he said they've had to massively increase their own infrastructure because they've got so many people working from home that they're not going to come into the site, and that all that taxes the cloud and what they do. Anyhow, so for us, the cloud has been good, and we see that not slowing down. The supply chain has definitely become complicated, and one of the benefits of having a global footprint is we've had to shift. So where maybe we couldn't sell into France at one point because of shutdowns, and we've been fortunate to have other avenues of downstream or resale to utilize. So we touch wood and all that, fingers crossed, and all that kind of stuff. We've been okay, but it's been a wild year. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and one other point along with that is it seems like everywhere we go, we see help wanted signs. So have you had any difficulty trying to hire enough labor? Because it seems like with the paid unemployment, some people just want to stay home and not work.
Yeah, I don't know the exact reason, but I would agree with you that it's been hard to find people. And then where some of our plants are, we compete with our Tennessee plant. There's a huge Amazon presence in Nashville, and so that's made getting labor tough. So yeah, it's definitely an issue finding qualified workers. I'm sure that'll eventually balance out. But yeah, it is definitely, there is a labor shortage. So it's something I've never seen in my, I'm not going to say how long, in my years of working. Because it just seems like we've never had such a problem finding people. So.
Yeah, and of course we're having to pay a lot more now for those workers. With your impressive track record selling into Fortune 500s and specifically the three biggest hyperscalers, what do you attribute your success to in that area?
My personal success or the success of the company?
Well, both. Let's take them both.
I think for the company, I think we've really just tried to stay the course, right? It seems like we really tried to build before in our business in general. We've been very reactive to things. So things happen and you figure out a way to pull things apart, right? Someone has a new gadget and you think, geez, how do we recycle that? And what we've tried to do the last few years is be proactive and say, hey, this is what's coming. Let's build a service that fits that need. And it seems basic, but at least for our company, it's huge because I felt like we were always reacting, and being proactive has really helped because you can tell a customer they need something before they even know they need it. To me, it reminds me of bottled water, right? 20 years ago, no one drank bottled water, but for some reason, companies have said, hey, here's something that maybe you don't think you need, but it's packaged, it's convenient, and so people drink it now. So anyway, so I think that's been the success of the company, and for me, I try to, it's my mantra just to play nice with everyone. I mean, it's good to be competitive and you want to, really make the company succeed, but I think you can do so in a way that you don't burn bridges and you do things in a way to where, I think people are generally speaking happy to work with Sims, even when we compete with them, because I've noticed that, the world's a small place, our industry is even smaller, and you just don't want to burn bridges. So for me, I try to act in a way to where, again, we want to be aggressive, we want to work hard and fight hard, but we also want to be respectful of our competitors. So.
And don't forget, The best way to support ITAD content is to rate and like the show on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or anywhere you might listen.